Does doing the right thing come at the cost of business performance? Can ethics and profit coexist? Welcome to the Human Conversation podcast. Join host Kaumadi Gowda for candid conversations with industry luminaries as we navigate the maze of decision-making in today's global workplace. Each episode offers a window into the minds of leaders achieving remarkable outcomes while balancing diverse priorities and stakeholders. Tune in for thought-provoking insights and actionable strategies on leading with ethics every day. Because in the pursuit of excellence, integrity matters.
Our guest today is Geoffrey van der Ven, a multidisciplinary professional working at the intersection of theatre, activism, and product innovation. As a theatre maker and spoken word artist, his work tells sharp, critical stories rooted in queer and BIPOC identities. He is currently developing his second solo, What's the Difference?, which tackles queer shame and will premiere in 2025. Alongside his creative work, Geoffrey is a seasoned product management and innovation consultant with over 8 years of experience helping organizations from startups to large corporates build user-centered products. He specializes in driving research-driven strategies, applying streamlined processes, and aligning teams to ensure that any product or innovation brings delight to its users. Follow his creative journey on Instagram at GNPix or connect with him professionally via LinkedIn to collaborate on human-centered solutions that make an impact on stage or in the market. Hey Geoffrey, welcome to our studio. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Geoffrey, we've enjoyed catching up and conversing over the last couple of years, and have watched all the amazing things you do with great interest. Right, you have such an interesting career in product management. You also handle innovation and strategy consulting. You also are a huge advocate and a spoken artist and a speaker, just to name a few. It's fascinating to me how you do all of this in the same 24 hours as everybody else. Is there a red thread that ties all of these activities for you? What's the driving force behind all that you do?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think I've always for a very long time split my career into two parts. There was the artist in me that does the hosting and the spoken word and the theater, and was the corporate human in me that the product management and the innovation consultancy and things like that. And I even on the corporate side for a long time had different jobs in consecutively different jobs. And at some point I was like, okay, but how does this make the CV make sense? And I literally had a job interview where I sat opposite someone and they said, make it make sense. And I realized that what I actually do at every company that I've ever worked at is I look at what we do, whether that's the systems that we use internally or the systems that we provide to our clients or users. And I see where it does and it doesn't work for the people that are using it. And then I take action because I get really itchy when I see something that doesn't work. And I'm like, well, we can probably fix this. So that I, come up with an idea, we test it, and we fix it, and we make it better. And that, in short, kind of sums up everything I did on that side. No matter where I was, I always ended up doing that. So then I figured I might as well make that my actual job, because I started industrial design engineering, and then eventually you end up doing innovation and product management, because they very much come down to that same thing of listening to people and designing something based on what they're telling you, or putting together something based on them. And I think that human aspect is what seeps through also on the artist side of the story. I was literally teaching a class yesterday in spoken word, and I was like, you need to come from the person. That's the part that's your story. That's the thing that's unique to you. That's the thing that you carry with you. And that's the message that you can always speak from. So I think that personal, the human, there's always the human connect. People are going to be, there's humans everywhere, but there's always the human thing, the human aspect of it, the human story. Whether that's your own story or the story of your clients, that's always present.
It's beautiful. What I'm hearing is human-centered problem solving, and whether it is a product, a company's system, or human societies at large, what you're looking for is how can we make it better for human beings? What do they need, and how can we make systems better? That's
Yes.
beautiful. And I think the work you do carries through, Geoffrey, in that sense. And along the way, with all of these things that you do, what do the terms ethics and integrity mean to you?
Ooh. Let's start with integrity because I think that's the easiest one to carry. Do what is right, not what's easy or what comes fast. Just do the right thing. I think that we overcomplicate integrity a lot, and I think that in some lines of work it can become very complicated. I think that in like 90% of the cases, it's as simple as doing the right thing, and then we ask, okay, right for who? In my case, it's a bit easier because I'm very user oriented. So in my case, it's do what's right for the users, and that sometimes means that within a company you have to have an argument, and that sometimes means that you're not going to please certain developers or certain stakeholders. But there is one thing that we're always aligned on, and that is that you're trying to make the business a success. And how do you make a business a success? By pleasing your users. So doing what's right for them. I become a very strong. It's funny because you used advocate earlier from like by artist by activist side, but within a company, I'm always advocating for the users, and that always becomes the main storyline in what I talk about and where I go for. And I think on stage, that comes down to the same thing, right? There's a responsibility to being on stage and writing theater shows and writing spoken word pieces and having an audience. Do the right thing with that responsibility. Come up for voices that don't have that stage. Speak to. It's gonna sound very Van Holier now, but speak to the greater good. Speak to use your story in the right way, and then be aware of the dynamics that are at play, and of the space that you take and the space that sometimes you maybe shouldn't take or should have someone else. Sounded like a ramble, but I found it.
No, I completely understand because we've discussed these things in the past, and I've shared with you before as well that I really admire how lightly you seem to carry the load when you put it the way you did. Indeed, it is a very straightforward thing. If we are very clear in our minds, objectives, in our systems and behaviors, that we are human centered, stakeholder centered, then it's a very straightforward thing that all systems must align because success, productivity, performance, profits cannot occur unless said stakeholders are centered in the way we're solving
Yeah,
things. Um,
and that's not to say that never that comes without gray areas, right? There's moments where you might have two user groups that have conflicting needs, or there's moments where, despite all the right intentions, you I don't know have a line in a poem that does hurt someone or offend someone. Um, I think that we need to get rid of that idea that there's no ambivalence in this. There can be like multiple things that occur at the same time. But then again, I think it comes down to how you then deal with those situations. So which choices do you then end up making, or how do you respond? If someone comes up to me after a performance and goes, "Hey, you mentioned this, but like I have no concrete example, but just vaguely, like you mentioned this and I feel like this about it. Do I shut that person down, or do I do what I feel is right, which is listen to them and have a proper human discussion about what it was and why it affected them, and what maybe I can learn from them?" If it's stakeholders that don't align, or if it's two user groups that have conflicting needs, how do you go about solving that need? And how honest are you in your communication towards those stakeholders and users to go, okay, this is the choice that we have made because of this, this, and that. I find 90% of the time, if you explain that choice and the background and the reason behind that choice, people are very willing and very understanding and have empathy and go, okay, I can kind of deal with that. But by being honest with that communication, you also give them the agency of making a different choice. Maybe they do need a different software or a different company to help them or fill the gap. Maybe the answer is, look, we have 5 developers. It's going to take longer. We had to prioritize this other thing because more people struggle from that problem. So there is ambivalence in that, but it is in principle indeed as easy as just do the right thing.
I really appreciate the pragmatic view and the fact that indeed they're competing priorities within organizations and systems. And one of the things that we've discussed in the past, Geoffrey, and perhaps you almost alluded to this, is the fact that you are someone who is so ferociously aligned to your values. I could say you wear your values on your sleeve. And we often read about empathy or compassion burnout or advocate burnout. And so, for someone who's so clear on their values, who's also working with clients and organizations who have such tight deadlines, such big commitments, and they have such embedded viewpoints on priorities that they feel a lot of pressure internally, maybe to cut corners or proceed a certain way, while maybe almost deprioritizing some things. Have you had a dilemma that you would be comfortable sharing with the audience? And here, I'll set it up. Here's why. The whole point of my podcast is to demystify and democratize the idea of ethical decision making, that it is possible to succeed and feel like you're working while staying aligned with your values. And I feel like you do that well. Not only that, you and I have discussed in the past that you've clearly done the work in taking care of yourself too. And you do keep a upbeat and positive mind space, which is so important in order to be successful, because mental well-being is important too. So all that to say, is there an example that you feel comfortable sharing where you navigate an ethical dilemma, and then maybe you can share what you learned from it in how to deal with these difficult conversations?
Yes, good question. So speaking of doing the right thing or being honest, I saw the questions a second ago because I didn't realize they were in the invitation, so I didn't think of like an example early on. And I'm trying to think if I can quickly come up with really an ethical one. Um, trying to figure out if I just got really lucky in my career that I didn't end up in ethical dilemmas, or if I just didn't see it as an ethical dilemma and I saw it differently. I find it hard. I couldn't come up with like a real like ethical issue that I bogged my brain over. Um, I think that when it comes down to staying aligned with your values, that's easier for me to speak on.
Mhm. Set a
Um,
blueprint in your mind where it's almost like an algorithm, and that's how you find it fairly straightforward, because that's consistent in everything you've said so far, that in your mind it's a straightforward thing. And did you work on it to make it straightforward, to unravel how we tend to overcomplicate things and worry? How did you get here? Maybe you could share your journey on how you created that algorithm in your head on making decisions straightforward for you.
I'm happy that you said it because I think that's maybe a large part of it. I am almost to a fault solution oriented as a person.
Good for
Um,
you.
and that's great. And like 90% of the times until I run into a problem that I cannot solve, and then I crash. So like when COVID happened, for example, I couldn't solve COVID. So I really struggled to deal with the pandemic for a while because you're in the situation that you have no grip on and that you can't take action on and you can't solve. So then what happens is that I start mauling on the problem over and over and over again. And so I literally drive myself crazy. But other than that, it means that indeed I run into things. I have a very practical approach or a very direct approach to running into situations. Um, and that's an approach that I got developed over time, because as much as you can be solution oriented when you're young and you start working, you don't have the confidence yet to be like, well, this is how it should go. And you very much are at the mercy of your environment, right? In the beginning stage of your career. And if that environment is a very nurturing one, great. And if that environment isn't so nurturing, you start running into problems. And you start finding it harder to speak up and to go about things the way you go. I think for me, after a while, I started working somewhere where I had a lot of agency, and where I had a boss that went, or a line manager that said, do what you think is right. And if it's wrong, learn from it. Which was amazing, because for once I could see like these innovation projects and these product management issues and go, this is what I think we should do. And 90% what I think we should do is talk to the users, and not talking to the users is never an answer for me. And you could walk through these processes in quite a clear way. I think that doing that had over time, working there had over time built up my confidence to an extent where I could go, not just I think this is right, but I think it is right because of these, and these points. And the moment you can communicate the because, not just to yourself, because the because will align with your own values and with how you feel you should move through your job, the world all around you. You can also, once you can articulate that to yourself, you can also start articulating it to the people around you. And I have found I've been in situations where I'm extremely convinced of something. And sometimes being a product manager requires vision, and requiring vision requires being very convinced of something, because otherwise it's not really a vision, it's more a guess. And I end up in very long discussions and meetings with a group of people, trying to not convince them that I'm right. And I think that's something we need to learn to let go. Convincing people that you're right never works. Or sometimes it works, but then you win the argument and you lose the working relationship, which is not worth it. But convincing them that it's a path worth exploring. And the moment that stopped being an argument was the day that I said, because the thing I always say is we test everything with users. So even this vision that I was very convinced of starts with user testing and talking to our customers and seeing if this is indeed where their problem lay and if this is indeed a suitable solution. So at some point I realized, okay, instead of me arguing with you about whether we should explore this, how about I tell you, which is also the truth, I would have literally done this, if I end up, we're going to test it with users, so we're not spending entire development capital on like developing a hunch, we're testing it with users. And if the users say that this indeed makes their life better and we find reasonable evidence to show that this solves a problem that they have and makes our product more usable, then great, we keep going in that vision. And if I am wrong, and I told one of the people who gave me the most resistance, I told them I will personally call you and tell you that you can say, I told you so, and I will buy you a beer and say, I'm sorry. I think that honesty, that human side of the story, your own human side of the story, your willingness to take responsibility and admit that maybe you're not perfect, and that if you're wrong, you will let them know that you're wrong. We miss that sometimes. But it aligns with a part of me about being open. And that part of me and that value of being open is what I carry through. I used to predominantly only carry through my artistry, because you can't be, I think you can be a poet without being open about who you are and what you're experiencing. And I started to bring that more and more into the workplace. And I started to not split my life into, and I started to be like at work also, like, yes, I am a poet. This is what I do. It's like, I am tired today because yesterday I was on stage until 11 p.m. And the more that you start being honest and open about all aspects of your life, you also get to be honest and open in your work itself. And that starts, then things fall into place.
That's beautiful. It sounds to me like what you're saying is, one, it's actually quite straightforward to do the right thing. Keep in mind
Yes.
that it's the stakeholders who matter the most. And if that's clear in your mind, sense of purpose, goal orientation, that's number one. Number two is to yourself be open, because if you're clear on what your goals are, you stay open and grounded and pragmatic about solution orientation. And number three, what you seem to be saying is clarity in communication. And I personally observe of you bucket loads of charm, because clearly you're managing to convince stubborn stakeholders and players in the ecosystem that what you're suggesting is evidence backed, it's going to benefit everybody, and that you're very willing to admit you're wrong when you are. These three seem to be the bullet points. One of the things I do know about your field, Geoffrey, is it's such a competitive field, and oftentimes product managers are working with extremely tight deadlines, lean teams, so not endless time, endless resources, and also perhaps leaders who have got very clear vision of what they want to achieve. And how, therefore, is there anything you'd add to this list, or anything that I've missed that you've shared already that would help a early career, mid career product manager to successfully persuade people to follow their advice, because you work with so many clients and organizations?
Two things. And I like what you said about successfully convince people to follow their advice. I like that you didn't say to successfully convince people that you're right. The first one, and I think it also comes along with the idea of always assume that you're not right, is sit in the other people's chairs. So one of the reasons why I always love being user-oriented is because I think everyone on any team can agree that as a company, you have customers. And that as a company, you want to make those customers happy. And as a customer, you most likely want to get more customers. So whether you agree with me or not, we can agree on this, which is like it's a shared value between yourself and your stakeholders. Keep whatever discussion you're having focused on that. It's not about me and it's not about you, and it's not, keep it focused on that. And then look at that goal through the eyes of the people around you. So sometimes you're talking with a stakeholder who is very resistant to an idea and you don't know why. And then think, okay, where are they sitting? What are their priorities? What are they trying to achieve? What impact on their business does what I'm about to suggest have? And when you understand, and sometimes that means, sometimes you can figure that out on your own. Sometimes you can sit there and be like, okay, well, I think that if I suggest this, it means that it's going to cause this much extra work for their team, which they don't really mind if they really know that there's good, sufficient evidence to prove that it will pay off. But if they don't have enough evidence, especially for them, I need a little bit more because it's a big impact on their team. Then I need to make sure that I'm gathering that evidence. I need to make sure that I communicate to them honestly about the fact that we're not going to keep going until we get that evidence. So have that empathy. Place yourself in their chairs and see how they see it. See what their priorities are. And if you can't figure it out, talk with them. Call them and ask them, hey. And here again, there's that openness in communicating. Don't call them and be like, how do I get you to agree with me? And don't call them and go, you don't like me. No, call them and go, hey, I noticed that when we had this meeting, you seemed uncomfortable with something. Talk about what you physically observe. Keep it on the facts. Don't assume something. Don't place or project an emotion onto it. Just go, we were talking about this and I noticed you said very little in the discussion. Or we were talking about this and I saw that you were really going in head first and I want to know what that is. That's you meeting them halfway and giving them a chance to meet you. And then you can have a conversation on, okay, so why is it that you weren't budging, or what is important to you, or how can we, what are the constraints that we need to meet in order for this to have enough evidence for you to go, yes, we will go forward with this. You get it. You create a whole different conversation. You create a conversation about empathy and understanding their side and about how you can create a context in which they do end up feeling comfortable going along with that choice. And I think that's very important. And also it takes the ego out of the room. One other thing I wanted to mention based on what you just said is things that you're missing. I always have a problem backlog. And that's not a ticket backlog or a feature backlog or a Jira list. It is a list of all issues that we know our customers experience with the product, of all problems that our customers have, prioritized according to how many customers experience that problem and how frequently they experience that problem. So if one customer experiences the problem 10 times a day, that goes quite high on the list. If 100 customers experience it 10 times a day, it's higher than the previous one. If 100 customers experience it once a year, probably less of an important problem to solve. And by having everyone agree on, yes, these are the problems, and yes, this is how important those problems are, you again take that away from your personal being and you being right, and you place it on, okay, how do we make it better for the users? We all agree, happy customers, more customers. So how do we make them happy? Solve these problems. And yeah, so those are two things I want to add to that is understand the empathy and prioritize the problems. And the latter is very important, not just to get everyone on board, but also, like you said, limited resources. You can't be solving 5 million things at the same time. You have to solve the most important thing, and then the second one.
I love that. It's very pragmatic, and it's almost like a recipe for success in a very competitive field. And actually, I'd love to hear any perspectives you have on this as well. It's such a volatile, complex, and uncertain time, isn't it? In technology, particularly, it's moving so fast too. So, do you have any perspectives to share in terms of ethics and integrity, customer orientation, or user orientation, in terms of responsible innovation or the future of this sector field? Yeah, I think it'd be very interesting for people perhaps like myself, not from the domain, but also people around the world who are following your work with interest and think of you as perhaps a role model in the field.
I think first and foremost, speaking of the future, there will always be companies and there will always be customers. So like there's some people who are talking about like the end of product management and the end of this and that. Like there will always be people that we're trying to make happy with our products, which means that you will always need an advocate for those people within companies to make sure that you're building the right product. That gets rid of all the dread side of the story. I think on ethics, yeah, I'm going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but I think in ethics, you end up in the same tale of just listen to your users. It's not that it doesn't have to be that hard or dramatic. Just listen to them. And not just as a product manager, this is something that I would like to give more towards like companies and the marketing teams of companies. Learn to admit and see that everyone makes mistakes and everything can be wrong. And consider the fact that you're working with people. And then the reason that I say this, and maybe it has less to do with ethics and more to do with integrity, I think that as companies over the years, also the marketing teams of companies and the way we're built and like everything that we kind of send out into the world, we've become so serious, almost inhumanely serious. We don't have a sense of humor, very direct, and everything has to be. And as someone who has tried to have, the what is that show that's really popular at the moment? I haven't seen it, but I remember it was about splitting your personality and
Severance.
having like. Yes, Severance. Almost Severance. Like, and as somebody who has tried the whole Severance model of the thing, that doesn't really work for me. This is me. This is who I am. I talk with my hands, and I'm a poet, and I laugh, and I crack jokes, and I have a weird sense of humor. Take that as well as a company and as a person when approaching your customers. And I have calls sometimes when I'm doing user testing, and you see that the user is like scared to give criticism because they don't want to be opposite someone who starts defending or gets angry at them or tells them that they're wrong. Sometimes somebody will go, I'll ask like, okay, how would you do this? And they would give me the steps, and the steps aren't the steps that were programmed. So they can't, they get stuck. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, no. If you can't do it based on how you feel you should be doing it, it wasn't made right. And have that empathy, have the ability to tell your users, yes, we did it incorrectly. Yes, it was wrong. No, I didn't understand how this worked. Or yes, we made this too complicated. On all levels. So, and I think that to me comes into the integrity of being an honest and open company or an honest and open product is being able to admit when you're wrong and that you can make mistakes and that you can also then solve those mistakes afterwards.
As a tech aficionado and perhaps a subject matter expert as well, are there examples in the public domain where you've observed companies or products doing what you're recommending here? That is to say, honesty, clarity, and empathy with users.
Yeah, I'm gonna struggle to come up with a really precise example. I recently saw, what was this? There was recently a company that I saw literally do this, and it made me so happy. I think within the Netherlands, Coolblue does this quite well.
That's right.
At least they do the whole. They have a really fun personality as a company. So I think they do admit it when they're wrong, but mostly they go about everything with a sense of humor, and that's really, really great. And that you see that sense of humor kind of carry through from their commercials, but also their communication channels on Twitter or something. If something goes wrong, they laugh with each other about it. I think another company that does this quite interestingly is the company that made is it the One phone?
Oh, yeah.
I want to say this correctly.
Forever phone or something.
That's Nothing, right? No, Nothing is
Oh,
their,
that's
what they're
great.
called.
Yes.
The Nothing phone.
Yeah.
So their CEO literally on YouTube, like he records himself live watching reviews and responds to these reviews. And in some places he gives context for choices, which I like because it's context for choice. So he's not excusing a problem or an issue. He's going, these are the constraints and these were the choices made based on those constraints, hence indeed this issue. But then with the iteration of their product, you see them respond to some of the criticism and fix some of the stuff that goes wrong. I think in the auto industry, you have Hyundai and Kia that are currently outperforming the living daylights of many other manufacturers, especially in the electric car world. And they're doing so not through like this humor quip thing that I was talking about earlier, but they're doing so by facelifting their product. And in every facelift, they address many of the criticisms that their cars got before. So you don't have to write a letter to the public and go, dear public, our apologies. It doesn't always have to be like that. Your actions speak louder than words. And Kia and Hyundai, they speak very clearly in actions, in their facelift, in tackling the issues that people are mentioning. I think where you don't, I have some examples of where you don't see it. I'm not going to name these companies. There's an app that I used from a large multinational company. And in the app, there's this box that pops up every once in a while that goes, do you want to give us some feedback? This app had been a unbelievably frustrating app to use. And it has, I think, a 2.3 rating in the Google Play Store, which made me go, honestly, if you want feedback, just read the reviews in Google Play and you've got enough complaints to go for it. But okay, I decided that I was annoyed. Actually, I was just annoyed enough to respond. So I, in my response, kept it very factual. So I wasn't like, oh, your app sucks. But I was like, these are the issues that I encounter as a user. And it makes my experience incredibly frustrating. And what I got as a response was an email explaining how to use the application. And I was like, I know how to use the application. It just does not work. I know that if I swipe down, it refreshes, but the refreshing action doesn't update the numbers. And that I found the most frustrating, annoying, ridiculous example of how to respond to a user talking about issues with your product. Instead of going, hey, oh, thank you for these issues. We'll take it up with our team, or we'll pass it down, or we'll add it to our problem backlog. It was, no, you're stupid. You don't know how to use the product. It's not literally what he said, but it's what gets insinuated when somebody responds with a manual to a complaint.
That tracks. There's lots of research that say that not only does the way an organization apologizes or makes up for a mistake is important, not only is that important, the perception of the authenticity and honesty of that apology also matters a lot. And when
Yes.
it works, the trust in the organization and the faith and loyalty towards its products goes up, even if future mistakes happen. And when it does not get perceived as honest and sincere, it actually does great damage. So it can not just stay neutral, it actually gets worse. And another thing we've also heard recently, and what you're saying plays out, is that it matters if you're patronizing your customers, if you're going to speak down to them, they're not going to. Because usually when people bother to give feedback, either they're extremely happy or very annoyed.
Yes.
And it's a great opportunity to either secure that loyalty and happiness or to assuage their annoyance. And if you mishandle at that point of contact, you're going to have someone who will actively be an ambassador against your company, right?
100%. And I will not like read into filth in a podcast, but like amongst friends, you talk about it and you express your frustrations. And I've had the opposite of this as well. I've had moments where there was a large web store that I spoke with, and no, it wasn't Amazon, where the delivery partner is a partner that I have had to receive deliveries from several times, and it's always gone wrong one way or the other. And at some point I called them to partly vent, but also to solve the problem. But I was very aware of the fact that the person I was talking to was not the person who like runs this company. And they weren't able to solve the problem, but they were very empathic. So they understood that I was frustrated, and they spoke about the fact that like, no, yeah, we get it. I've heard this more times. Let me see what I can do. Even just that line, let me see what I can do. Even if you can't do anything, I've had this as well as a product manager where you see like a massive problem with your product and you don't have the resources to solve it within a week. And you're like, it's a big problem. But like, just being able to go to a customer, I'm going to put in my best effort and attempt to help you. That already changes the interaction that you're having, because it goes from the experience of you working against them and making their life harder for something that should be simpler to, okay, let me see if I can stand on your side of the story and help you. And even if I can't help you, maybe relieve some of your frustration.
Oh, this is fantastic. It's a beautiful sort of blueprint or recipe to hand through rank and file across the organization. Any person who engages with an external user, whether inside the ecosystem or not, if they are aware of these principles, fundamental principles of keeping your users happy or pleased or satisfied with the interaction, I think it's a very good recipe that you shared with us. And yeah, please.
Not just the users who interact, or not just the people who interact with the users, but have that message carry on within the organization. So development teams, every time I work with a development team, I need and want them to be able to read the interviews with the customers and to understand the customer's problem. Because first of all, you end up with creative solutions that anybody else on the team would have never thought of. And second of all, it aligns them on the mission. It aligns them on understanding why they're doing this ticket and what they're doing the ticket for. And the more empathy you have within your company towards the users that you're trying to solve problems for, the better that solution ends up being, and the more motivated people end up being. Because if you just throw tickets over the fence and give them no context, you don't feel connected with your users or who you're solving something for or why you're solving this ticket and why it's important. You just kind of do it because you have nothing to base any extra choices on. Whereas if you involve them from a very early stage, maybe not for the individual email interviews themselves, but literally just post-interview and make sure that whatever insights you pass on to them also carry the message of the users and explain the context of the users. You generate way more interest and engagement from everyone in the team who touches something that eventually goes to the user.
That's fantastic. I think as a core value, a fundamental value, you're saying that obviously it makes the products better, which results in happy users and more users. It helps give a sense of shared values and purpose, which elevates a sense of well-being across rank and file. You're also saying it helps with conflict management because everyone's clear. We're all in this together. We're all working towards this. Therefore, nothing's personal. And we're really just looking at evidence-backed solutions. And finally, you're saying that it is also a fantastic brand value that every single person in that organization is oriented towards you. And wouldn't you want to be such a valued customer for anything that you might want to use? Fabulous. Geoffrey, you have so many varied interests. Is there a book, a quote, or any advice that you hold close to your heart right now and you'd like to share?
Oh, a book, yes. And it's because I'm currently writing a theater show about shame. And to write that show, I do research, and then part of that research was reading a book called Velvet Rage. And that book was written by a therapist who was seeing certain patterns of very suppressed shame within the gay community. But I think that every single person on the face of the planet should read this book. And not just when you're part of the queer community, but just as a human being. This research on shame it's incredible because it's you realize that it's present in so many layers of society and in so many examples that you see and so many responses that people have to things, and even they go from like politicians to people who work within your company. I think that we don't talk about shame, which is one of the mechanisms of shame, is that we hide and we don't talk about it. And because we talk about it so little, it's not on our empathy radar. We very rarely go, oh, what if they're ashamed? And that's why this is the response. And not talking about shame keeps shame intact. So that's a silence that I think we need to collectively break in order to make working together easier, in order to help you understand the world, in order to I think it just makes life easier to have that extra little insight into this one emotion that we kind of keep aside. And even when we do talk about shame, we very frequently incorrectly define it, so then we're still miscategorizing.
That's such a familiar thing, though. I mean, the chokehold shame can have once it's triggered. I think it's such a primal emotion that nothing else works. None of your rationality, logic, orientation towards others, none of it. You're just locked into this and you're trapped there. And so suboptimal responses after that. I love it. It's called Velvet Rage, did you say?
Yes, Velvet Rage.
Who's it by?
That, you know what? Somebody asked me this yesterday as well. And I was like, I read the whole book and I still don't know who it's by. Let me quickly check who wrote it. Alan Downs, yes.
Alan
Downs.
Thank you.
I'll pop it in the chat as
well.
well.
And we'll share it with the audience. Thank you so much. Geoffrey, for folks who love what you do, want to know more about what you're doing, perhaps your upcoming play, or to invite you as a speaker, as a poet to their events, where can people find you? What's the best way to contact you and follow your work?
The best way to contact me, Instagram is always great. GNPix, and that's the N for Nico, not the M for Maria. And my website, which has like a contact form, and then you can contact me through the website. That's the Dutch Geven, which is my initials and my surname spelled phonetically. It's not a very smart choice of a website, speaking of user feedback, but it's the domain that I have.
It's unique.
They've not
Yes,
me.
and it's unique and it's simple. I'm going to share all these links. Geoffrey, thank you so much for your time. You mentioned that you've just come back from your travels. I really appreciate you sharing this time with us and for sharing all these amazing insights and advice. You take good care. I cannot wait to catch your show very soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And it was really fun to like start with this connection that was made with a product manager I met in London and to still be speaking with each other a year later. It's lovely.
Well, you're amazing. Keep doing your magic and shine on, Geoffrey.
Thanks.
Take care.
As we wrap up today's discussion on the human conversation on leadership and ethics, it's clear that integrity and ethics are the cornerstone of leadership. Host Kaumadi Gowda thanks you for joining us in this vital dialogue. Before you go, hit that subscribe button and become a part of the community dedicated to ethical leadership. Share your thoughts and continue the conversation with #TheHumanConversationPodcast.